What if the greatest episode of Doctor Who wasn't about any timey-wimey shenanigans, but instead about grief? Doctor Who has given us countless standout episodes. Blink, Doomsday, The Day of the Doctor, Silence in the Library, you name it. They were all heralded on release and still hold up today. But there's one episode in particular that stands above them all. The cream of the crop, and in this video I'll be taking a deep dive into what I think is the best episode of the entire show. What is this episode, you may ask? Well, as you can see by the title, it's none other than Heaven Sent. A bottle episode, a mystery and a confession, and possibly the most profound take on grief the show has ever attempted. Heaven Sent aired 10 years ago this month, depending on when you're watching this. No TARDIS, no companion, just the Doctor alone, trapped in a shape-shifting castle with something inevitable that hunts him down every step of the way. It's a one-man show wrapped inside a mystery, and even a decade later still feels like nothing else on TV. Hi, I'm Dan, and today we're taking on the big one. We're looking back at how Heaven Sent turned loss into legend, and we're going to be looking at it through the 5 stages of grief, how Steven Moffat and Rachel Talalay use sound, image and repetition to elevate heartbreak and turn it into something incredible. From denial to anger, to bargaining, to depression, and finally acceptance, we will see how the Doctor's time in this castle mirrors his journey through loss. If you think about it, this episode is basically just the BBC locking Peter Capaldi into a room for 55 minutes and letting him cook. And spoiler alert, he most definitely does cook. A full course meal, a 5-star Gordon Ramsay approved restaurant meal, and quite honestly deserves a meal for this episode. But my friends, as always, grab a drink, grab a snack, sit back and relax. Unless you're the Doctor, in which case you're probably punching a diamond hard wall and screaming into the void. Which sounds like an average Thursday night for me in 2020. But without further ado, let's take a jump into grief. On November 28th, 2015, we open in the aftermath of tragedy. Clara is dead. And for the first time in Series 9, the Doctor is truly alone. This episode is Steven Moffat at his most intricate, and Rachel Talalay at her most cinematic. This story places the full emotional and narrative weight on Peter Capaldi, and he kills it. He's so good in this that it's his defining episode, and yes, I do have a bit of a man crush on him at this point. Beneath all of the moving parts and the freakishly long corridors, Heaven Sent is a mystery that the Doctor has to solve. The Doctor's grieving and is solving something far more personal. What we're really watching is denial, not the river in Egypt. The Doctor is trapped in his own mind, cycling through problems and doing whatever he can to avoid feeling the one thing he can't face. The fact that Clara is gone forever, and I completely get it because I was 14 when I watched this episode, and that boy was devastated that Jenna Coleman left the show. And like denial in real life, the world doesn't make sense. His whole environment constantly changes. Nothing adds up at all. Rachel Talalay's direction really leans into this weird, grungy, and almost wrong feeling that the episode has. Rooms appear and then they disappear. They rearrange themselves. It's like the castle is actively trying to gaslight the Doctor. The Doctor is in shock, and the environment changes to match that headspace, including the camera. It's all designed to make us feel the same disorientation that the Doctor is feeling. And it works beautifully. Even the music and the score lean into that same unease. The score also becomes super minimal, more like echoes drifting through empty rooms than an actual melody. That musical restraint builds the emotional distance, not just between the viewer and the Doctor, but also what's between the Doctor and the thing he's refusing to face. Because when you're in denial, you've got no feelings, no rational thought process, just constant distractions. He sprints from room to room, because if he stops, even just for a second, the truth might finally catch up to him. But the thing about grief is that it doesn't chase you. It doesn't need to chase you. because it knows it's already won. And in this castle, it's in the walls. If denial in Heaven Sent is quiet and foggy and numb, then anger is where everything snaps. And I mean everything. This is the moment the Doctor stops drifting through the castle and starts trying to fight back. Because now, this grief has teeth. The castle itself feels designed for this stage. It keeps shifting around him, constantly rewriting its own rules. Every time a hallway shapes or a corridor changes, it's another constant reminder that the Doctor isn't just trapped physically, but also emotionally. Clara is still gone, and nothing's going to change that. And that's when anger starts to settle in, when the world refuses to budge. The veil, which started as the shape of his fear, becomes something closer to a stand-in for everything he can't yell at directly. Capaldi starts to talk to the veil like it's wasting its time, but anger always needs a target, and since he can't fight the universe, fate, or death itself, the veil becomes the closest available punching bag. Of course, the anger isn't really about the veil, it's about Clara. It's about being powerless in a way he hates more than anything. It's about every space rule he's ever broken suddenly not being enough. But it comes out sideways, because that's what grief does. It lashes out at whatever's close without much thought going into it. The Asbantian wall sequence is the most literal expression of this stage. Watching the Doctor hammer his fists into a substance billions of times harder than diamond isn't triumphant. It's ugly. It's the kind of anger that hurts you more than the thing you're hitting, but you hit it anyway because doing nothing would feel so much worse. Every punch, every tiny flake of rock that comes loose is anger being burned as fuel. It's not strategic. It's raw emotion made repetitive, and it resets every time he dies. It traps him in the cycle of his own rage. And then we get onto Clara. Well, a version of Clara, not the Clara. This Clara is in the Doctor's mind. She isn't there to scold him out of being angry. She's there as the reminder that anger isn't all he is. Her presence is the guiding light and is exactly what keeps the Doctor from going feral in that maze of corridors. If the castle is designed to strip him down, then Clara is the one thing holding the line against total collapse. Her pep talk moment isn't sentimental. It's grounding. It's her telling him that anger can push him forwards, but it can't tell him where to go. Anger doesn't solve anything. Like, genuinely, have you guys ever been in a situation where you got so angry and so mad that it actually made the situation better? I feel like most of you are going to say no, because it's an emotional reaction rather than a thought out response. Anger doesn't free him from the castle or bring Clara back, but it does get him moving. It's the engine that keeps him walking down the hallway even when he knows exactly what's waiting for him at the very end. Anger isn't his escape, it's just the first time he tries to escape. And soon, that drive is gonna twist into something else. Something quieter, and something more desperate. But that's the next stage. If anger is the emotional wrecking ball, then bargaining is where he puts the hammer down and picks up the blueprints. It's where smashing things turns into calculating things. And that's exactly what the Doctor does next. Suddenly the castle stops being a prison and becomes a puzzle for him to solve. Every hallway, every shifting doorway, and every crystal wall becomes a new question. How do I get out of this alive? And to be fair, he kind of doesn't. He starts scribbling on walls, drawing diagrams and doing experiments, like a sleep-deprived detective who hasn't had breakfast in billions of years. Because a puzzle is something he can solve. A puzzle is something he can control. And control is the closest thing he has to hope. And the real trick of bargaining is you're not solving a problem, you're trying to solve your feelings. You're trying to talk reality into being kinder than what it's giving. The Doctor isn't really talking to Clara. He's talking to her ghost, the version of her living inside his head, like a motivational poster with a British accent, which basically sums up every single Doctor Who character, if you think about it. Every conversation becomes a deal he's trying to make with himself. He's not bargaining with the castle, he's bargaining with his own grief. But grief doesn't do deals. Grief just waits. And grief is very, very patient. And then there are the loops. The several thousand million billion trillion loops. Every time he dies, he restarts. Like a cosmic video game without a pause button. And you know in like GTA 5 story mode where when you die, you spawn at the hospital. This is basically like that, but instead of a hospital, it's like a really big silver tube he spawns in every single time. Each reset feels like another chance to beat and win the castle. But the rules never change. The pain doesn't go away. Only the clock does. It's an escape room where the only way to re-enter is to die first. A maze designed by someone who thinks fairness is an optional setting. He keeps bargaining, but you can't cheat fate or death or sadness. And yet there is brilliance here. The patience and precision all grows in this stage, sharpened by the Doctor's pure desperation to get out of here. He's not bargaining with the castle, he's bargaining with himself, trying to exchange cleverness for comfort. But also, grief doesn't accept trades. Eventually, his time is up. Billions of years of trial and error, billions of loops, deaths, and a lot of the word bird written in sand. Solving a puzzle doesn't fix a broken heart. Winning the game doesn't bring back who you lost. Some grief can't be outsmarted, and some prisons don't open. After every reset, eventually the Doctor is going to run out of deals to make. But how many attempts does he have left? If bargaining was the Doctor frantically trying to outsmart grief, then depression is what happens when the maths stops adding up. This is the moment the castle's feel switches yet again, and at this point it becomes a verdict rather than a challenge or anything else, because eventually he realises he's not getting out of here. He's not getting out today, not on this loop, not on the next, probably not for the next billion either. Not only does the castle change, but also the episode changes, because now it seems like the start of a new mini chapter in this episode, which is exhaustion. The corridors get longer, the monologues get quieter, and the Doctor himself starts moving like gravity remembered he owed it interest. You can see the depression in the way he sits by the fire. No planning, no plotting, just existing. And waiting for the next inevitable death. It's the stillness of a man who's finally ran out of distractions. He has burnt through every hypothesis, and all that's left is the silence between his own thoughts. And again, not those silence. Even Clara's ghost changes here. She's no longer the motivation for the grand escape plan he thought out in his mind. She's a ghost wearing encouragement like a mask. And she represents the thing he's been avoiding saying out loud. She's gone, and he's finally alone. And the veil? It stops being scary and becomes tired. Depression in Heaven Sent isn't melodramatic. Instead, it's a grief so heavy that it bends time itself, turning every room in this infinite castle into another reminder that he's been walking in circles for longer than what some civilizations last. And yet, even here, something is starting to change. The thing about the Doctor is he can stay seated in the darkness for a very long time, but he never stays seated because, quite frankly, he's got too much ADHD to warrant sitting still for extended periods of time. What really sells this stage is how perfectly the creative team syncs together. Moffat's writing shifts gears here, dropping the clever verbal motifs and leaning into repetition, half-thought sentences, and those little pauses that the Doctor never lets himself have. Talalay takes that energy and amplifies it visually. She holds shots for too long and lets the silence breathe. She frames Capaldi like a man shrinking inside architecture that keeps growing. And now the castle doesn't chase him, it overwhelms him by existing. And then there's Murray Gold, again. His score in this middle stretch isn't bombastic or heroic. In fact, it's more hollow. And not in a bad way. There's so little happening at this stage that it's like the music is grieving with him. By the time he's slumped by the fire, you don't need words. The sound design has already told you this is what a man looks like when the universe finally goes quiet. Depression is endurance. It's a reckoning with limits, and the fact that some battles can't be won, and some losses can't be undone. And yet, it's also a quiet preparation. Even here, the Doctor's stubbornness still lingers. Even in the quiet, there is the faintest glimmer, the chance to rise and face the next stage. Acceptance is coming, but first, he must endure. If depression is the collapse, then acceptance is the final stand. And acceptance isn't some neat emotional epiphany. It's not even a choice. It's a grind. A never-ending grind. Acceptance arrives not as a realization, but as momentum. The momentum to keep going and get up off of his arse. Once he stops trying to bargain with the castle, and he stops trying to outthink the grief, what's left is a single, brutally honest truth. He can't go over it, he can't go around it, he has to go through it. And he really does. And that's what the punching the wall sequence really is. It's a man finally accepting the rules of the universe, but this time choosing to endure them anyway. There's no shortcut here, just a slow, steady, and impossible journey of healing. And what's the cost? What does he have to go through? Well, the Doctor has to go through billions of years doing the hardest thing he's ever done. Continuing. Over and over. Every punch is a little acceptance. Every reset is a little acceptance. Every moment that he stands back up, coughing blood, is yet another little acceptance. He's not trying to bring Clara back anymore. He's not trying to escape fate. He's not even trying to win. He's just living with the grief until time catches up. Long enough and consistently enough that he can finally break through the last wall the universe put in front of him. And when he steps out of the diamond prison confession dial, it's clarity. Long-awaited clarity. Acceptance isn't the end of the pain. It's knowing that the pain doesn't get to stop you. The thing about the wall-punching scene is that everyone behind the camera is working at their absolute best to make something that's simultaneously mythic and human. Moffat's writing becomes almost biblical here. Every repeated line adds weight, and every return to that long corridor becomes its own mini-chapter in a several billion year confession. This whole castle is a product of his own making, and all he has to do is to confess. Talalay shoots it like a ritual. The corridor before the Doctor gets to the wall becomes almost like a sacred ground, and the wall becomes a monument. Her direction turns what could have been a gimmick into one of the most emotionally raw sequences in the show's entire history. And Murray Gold, well, he's back again, but this time with his own Sistine Chapel. The Shepherd's Boy is an incredible track that symbolises the Doctor's motivation to power on through, even if he gets arthritis from the amount of times he's punched the wall. The track starts soft, mirroring the Doctor's first punches that hardly scratch the surface. And then it grows, layer by layer and loop after loop, until the music becomes a force to be reckoned with. By the final breakthrough, and the moment the Doctor's last punch breaks the wall, Murray Gold is scoring victory. The victory that the Doctor has been wanting for billions and billions and billions of years has finally arrived. And when Capaldi steps out and sees the orange skies of his home planet, he's ready to make a deal with the devil, a deal that will rewrite time itself. If Heaven Sent was a story of grief, then Hellbent is a story about relapse. Because the twist of this story is that acceptance isn't a finish line, it's a checkpoint. And in Hellbent, the Doctor blows right past it like a man who hasn't learned a single thing. I absolutely love this episode and feel like it's the perfect companion piece to Heaven Sent. It's one of the most underrated episodes of the whole show because I think people were expecting something a little bit different than what it was. You know, Gallifrey comes back and I think people were expecting like this war with the Time Lords or something like that. But instead, what we got is a very, very deep character study on two characters who are absolutely obsessed with each other. It's a love that goes beyond romantic. Of course, all of that emotional architecture, that careful build from denial to depression into acceptance, gets complicated the moment Hellbent begins. And Moffat writes the Doctor switching allegiances from honesty to obsession. Talalay takes one final swing and makes it visual. Gone are the claustrophobic corridors of the dial, and now we get the mythic sweep of Gallifrey dust, and these wide shots of an orange desert. And also a shot that basically is a homage to John Hurt's Doctor in The Day of the Doctor when he's walking to the barn. What makes Hellbent so fascinating and so divisive is that it's not a victory lap. It's the Doctor doing the one thing grief always tempts you with right after you think you've gotten the better of it. The relapse into fantasy. This is the moment he steps out onto Gallifrey with his chest out, doing his best walk. Like, seriously, this man has a guitar and all of that. Like, who's doing it like him? Only for the episode to reveal that he's basically on the emotional version of a sugar crash. The trial of grief didn't end when the castle did. It ends when you stop trying to rewrite the universe to avoid it. And in typical Doctor fashion, the Doctor does what the Doctor does best. He rewrites history to avoid it. Hellbent isn't about heroism. He confronts the Time Lords like he is a man who has finally found someone he can blame for the thing he refuses to accept. You know, after he threw punches at the Vel, he's now found a new target to be pissed off with. He uses Gallifrey as nothing more than a crowbar to pry Clara out of death. But just when you think he's healed, it jumps all the way back to stage 1. Denial. The barn, the gun, the extraction chamber, they're symptoms of Heaven Sent still present in this episode. The Doctor is breaking every rule he once stood for, using a weaponized regeneration cycle as a bargaining chip, all to undo the pain of something he finally admitted. Clara isn't framed as someone who needs to be rescued. And that's where Hellbent delivers the final twist of the knife. Acceptance doesn't belong to the Doctor, but instead, it belongs to Clara. She's the one who says stop, and the one who recognises the cost. And the Doctor, the man who fought through a diamond-hard wall for her, he finally gets his lesson. Not by saving Clara, but by losing the memory of her. It's almost a punishment as a consequence of how far he went and God knows how many rules he broke. He tries to fight time, but like the 10th Doctor found in the waters of Mars, time has really strong hands. Hellbent is the final difficult truth in this story. You can break walls, break rules, and break time itself, but you can't break the fact that goodbyes are set in stone and are unable to change. In the end, Heaven Sent and Hellbent aren't two stories. They are one spiral of grief told in two directions. One is the story of a man clawing his way towards acceptance across billions of years. The other is the story of the same man turning around and walking straight back into where he started. Grief doesn't care how clever you are. It doesn't care how fast your ship or your car is or how many times you saved the universe. And it doesn't care how many lives you've lived. Grief is bigger than all of that. Heaven Sent shows the Doctor breaking himself for billions of years, whereas Hellbent shows him breaking the rules of the universe because the truth still hurts too much to face. One is healing, one is relapse, but both are staggeringly honest and painfully human. After all the resets, all the grand speeches, all the big space gestures, the thing that finally saves him isn't a plan, a trick, or a victory. It's letting go. As he walks out of that Nevada diner with a sexy guitar on his back and sadness in his eyes, he becomes someone who knows just enough to move forwards, but not enough to move back. And sometimes the best thing you can do isn't to try to force the universe to change. It's walking away from the one you already broke, and finally accepting the truth that the world's been whispering all along. So, my friends, I want to thank every single one of you for watching. It means a lot, and I really hope the snack and drink you had while watching this was very nice. And if you did have one of these things, let me know in the comments, and I will rate your option of choice on a scale of 1 to 10, so don't let me down. Hopefully, I'm going to start doing more of these video essays in the new year, so be on the lookout for that. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you want to see more of me or my videos, please hit that subscribe button, because a man's got to get to 1,000 subscribers somehow. Whatever time it is, and wherever you are in the world, I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.